She thought ignoring them would make them stop. She was wrong. They weren't just trespassing. They were trashing her pool, vandalizing her home, and laughing as they called her racial slurs. A black woman alone in her own house, treated like an outsider. But she wasn't weak. She wasn't helpless. So she set a trap. The night they jumped in, they didn't just get stuck. They screamed for help. But nobody came. And by the time they realized what she had done, it was already too late. The moon hung high over the quiet suburban neighborhood, casting silver streaks across the backyard. The pool water shimmered, motionless, an inviting oasis beneath the night sky. But it wasn't just water anymore. Inside the house, Monica Grant stood motionless behind the curtain, watching. Her fingers gripped the fabric tightly as shadows moved across the lawn. They were here. Again. Laughter echoed through the air as 4 teenage boys, Kyle, Chase, Logan, and Tyler, hopped the fence, landing effortlessly on her property. They were arrogant, entitled, and worst of all, untouchable. Kyle, the ringleader, smirked as he pulled out a beer bottle and took a long swig before hurling it across the yard. It shattered against her patio, sending glass skidding across the tiles. "Oops," he chuckled. "Guess she'll have to clean that up." Chase leaned over, whispering something in his ear, and Kyle's grin widened. He turned to face Monica's house, cupping his hands around his mouth. "Yo, you still awake, lady?" he taunted, his voice dripping with mockery. "Or did you finally get the message and move out?" The others laughed. Monica's chest rose and fell steadily. She had ignored them before. She had tried everything. But these boys weren't just trespassing. They were terrorizing her. They trashed her yard, vandalized her mailbox, scratched racial slurs into her fence. And last week, they had destroyed her car. The police did nothing. Kyle's father, Charles Whitmore, had made sure of that. So tonight was different. Kyle kicked off his shoes and peeled off his shirt. "Come on, boys, let's go for a swim." Monica didn't move. She just watched. One by one, the boys stripped down to their boxers, laughing as they splashed into the water. And that's when it happened. Kyle's laughter turned to confusion. Then, panic. "What the—" His arms flailed, but something was wrong. His skin stuck. His legs wouldn't move right. The more he struggled, the thicker the water became. Chase let out a strangled yell. "Dude, I can't get out!" The water clung to them like tar, pulling at their limbs, holding them in place. "What the hell is this?" Kyle bellowed, eyes darting around in fear. And that's when Monica stepped outside. She didn't speak. She didn't rush. She just stood at the edge of the pool, looking down at them. Kyle's furious, panicked eyes locked onto hers. "What did you do?" Monica knelt beside him, her voice calm, too calm. "I warned you," she whispered. "I gave you a chance to stop." Kyle thrashed harder, but it was no use. They were stuck, helpless, trapped in the very place they thought they owned. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barked, a car drove past, but nobody came for them. And by the time they realized what she had done, it was already too late, 3 months earlier. Monica Grant had arrived in Maple Ridge Estates with a heart full of hope. The moving truck had barely pulled away when she stood on her front lawn, hands on her hips, taking in the moment. Her first home. A dream she had worked 2 decades to achieve. Everything about the neighborhood looked perfect. Pristine lawns, elegant houses, friendly neighbors walking their purebred dogs. It was the kind of place she had only imagined living in when she was a little girl, growing up in a cramped apartment. But as she turned to wave at her new neighbors, the reality became clear. No one waved back. A blonde woman in yoga pants clutched her toddler's hand a little tighter. A man watering his lawn barely spared her a glance before turning away. And then there was Charles Whitmore, tall, broad, and wearing an expensive polo that screamed old money. He had strode across the street and stopped just shy of her driveway, his hands clasped in front of him. His smile was thin. "You must be Monica," he said, his tone polite but distant. She nodded, extending a hand. He didn't take it. Instead, he gave her a once-over, his expression unreadable. "I'm the head of the Homeowners Association. I like to meet new residents personally." "Oh, that's great," Monica smiled. "I'm looking forward to getting to know everyone." He didn't smile back. Instead, his gaze flickered toward her car, a 2015 Toyota Corolla, that suddenly felt embarrassingly out of place among the gleaming SUVs and sports cars. "I'll have someone send you a copy of the HOA rules," he said flatly. "This community values order, Miss Grant. We like to keep things harmonious." Something about the way he said it sent a chill down her spine. Monica watched as he turned and walked away, her stomach twisting. She had barely unpacked, and already she felt unwelcome. At first it was subtle, a letter in her mailbox informing her that her front yard plants were not within regulation. Then, a fine for leaving her trash bin out too long. She ignored it. She followed the rules. She kept her head down. But then, the boys started. It began with small things, a smashed flower pot, graffiti on her fence, tiny, barely noticeable, but she knew what it meant. Then, one night, she found her tires slashed. She called the police. They came, they looked around, and then they did nothing. Kyle Whitmore, Charles's golden boy, leaned against the hood of his brand new BMW across the street, smirking as the officers left. She knew. He knew. Everyone knew. Kyle and his friends were untouchable. It was a Sunday evening when Monica stepped outside and froze. Her swimming pool was filled with beer bottles, cigarette butts, and sludge. A bottle of bleach had been poured in, turning the water cloudy and toxic. And on the pool deck, carved deep into the wood, was one word: leave. Monica stood there, breathing hard, fingers trembling. Something inside her shifted, snapped. She had tried to ignore it. She had tried to be civil. She had tried to endure. No more. That night, Monica sat in her garage, mixing chemicals, testing formulas. If the police wouldn't give her justice, she would take it herself. And when the boys returned, she would be ready. Kyle Whitmore was drowning. At least, that's what it felt like. His arms flailed, his legs kicked, but nothing moved the way it was supposed to. Instead of slicing through the water, his limbs stuck, glued to the surface like he had jumped into a vat of syrup. "What the hell?" he roared, his voice cracking with panic. Chase thrashed beside him, his eyes wild. "Dude, I can't swim!" Tyler and Logan, the other two boys, fought harder, but every movement only made it worse. The thick, gelatinous substance clung to their skin, dragging them down, turning each second into a nightmare. Monica stood at the edge of the pool, arms folded, silent, unmoved, watching. Kyle's breath came in sharp gasps as he locked eyes with her, and for the first time in his privileged, protected life, he was afraid. "What did you do?" he bellowed, voice breaking. Monica tilted her head, considering the question. Then, slowly, she crouched beside the water. "You want to know?" she asked, her voice almost gentle. Kyle's panic only deepened. The last time she had ever spoken to him directly, she had been pleading for him to stop, begging the police to do something. Now she wasn't begging. She was in control. Monica tapped the surface of the water with her finger. It didn't ripple. It didn't move. "This," she murmured, "is a little something I made myself." Monica spent nights researching what was safe to touch, but impossible to escape. She experimented in her garage, mixing corn syrup, gelatin powder, and industrial adhesive, testing and adjusting. She created something that looked just like water, odorless, transparent, but the moment heat and friction activated it, it turned into a nightmare. She tested it by dipping an old shoe in. 30 seconds later, she couldn't pry it loose. She smiled. The perfect trap. Kyle was losing it. Every inch of him was sinking into the thick, unrelenting goo. I can't feel my legs," Logan cried, his voice shrill. "Shut up!" Kyle barked, trying to take control, but his own voice shook. Chase turned his wide, terrified eyes to Monica. Please help us." Monica smiled. "Why?" Tyler sobbed, his hands trembling as he tried to wipe sticky goo from his face. I'm sorry," he choked out. "I swear, I didn't want to." Monica raised an eyebrow. "Didn't want to? But you did." Kyle's jaw clenched. "This is illegal. You're gonna be arrested for this." Monica leaned in slightly, her dark eyes cold. "So, call the police." Silence. Kyle's face twisted, because he knew. The same police who had ignored Monica's calls, who had let him off every single time, weren't going to come rushing to save him. He had made sure Monica felt powerless for months. Now, it was his turn. She stood and pulled her phone out of her pocket. She wasn't dialing 911. She was recording. Kyle's face drained of color, and that's when it hit him. She wasn't going to let them go. Kyle stopped struggling. His chest heaved, his limbs trembling, as the reality of the situation sank in. Literally, they weren't getting out, not without her letting them go. His eyes flickered to Monica's phone, the red recording light blinking like a warning sign. "You think this is funny?" he snapped, his voice shaking between rage and fear. "You're recording us. You think this is some kind of game?" Monica's gaze was steady, unshaken. "No," she said calmly. "I think this is called justice." The boys were still panicking. Logan was sobbing, his arms barely above the thick liquid, and Chase had stopped screaming, his face twisted in realization. Monica turned her camera toward Kyle. "Tell me something, Kyle." Her voice was soft, dangerous. "Why do you hate me so much?" Kyle's lips parted, but no words came. His throat worked uselessly, searching for an answer that wouldn't make him sound as disgusting as he really was. "What?" Monica pressed. "Not so brave now?" Kyle's nostrils flared. "Screw you." Monica let out a slow sigh. "You know, I almost feel bad for you." Kyle snorted. Shh." Monica's finger hovered over the screen of her phone, and then she clicked a button. The audio recording started playing, and Kyle's heart stopped. Monica had been walking back from her car, groceries in hand, when she heard the laughter. She didn't stop. Not at first. She had trained herself to ignore it. The slurs, the whispered insults, the casual dehumanization. But then Kyle's voice cut through the air like a blade. "She thinks she's safe here?" he sneered. "We should just make her life a living hell until she leaves. Not like anyone's gonna stop us." Logan laughed. "I mean, it's not like the cops care." Chase's voice, hesitant. "Dude, maybe we should chill." Kyle's voice hardened. "Chill? You kidding? She doesn't belong here. My dad says people like her bring property values down. We're just helping the neighborhood, man." The laughter. The agreement. Monica had stopped in her driveway that day, her blood running ice cold. They weren't just bullying her. They wanted her gone. And that was the moment Monica knew. They would never stop. Not unless she made them. The boys' faces turned to stone as their own voices played back from Monica's phone. Their voices. Their laughter. The evidence of their hatred now laid bare. Kyle's breathing turned ragged. You were recording us." Monica smiled. "I learned from the best." Kyle knew what this meant. This wasn't just a prank gone wrong. This was a hate crime. And now, there was proof. Monica let the recording end and slowly tucked her phone back into her pocket. She had all the evidence she needed. "You're done," she murmured. Kyle thrashed harder, desperate now. "No! You can't do this! My dad!" Monica's expression didn't change. "Your dad can't save you from this." Kyle was unraveling. His confidence, his smug arrogance, gone. All that remained was panic. "You don't understand," he yelled, his voice breaking. "My dad, he'll ruin you for this. You think you can just—" "Oh, I don't think, Kyle." Monica's voice was eerily calm. "I know." She took a step closer to the pool's edge, looking down at them like a judge passing a sentence. "You see," she continued, "I spent weeks putting this together, planning it, testing it." She tapped the surface of the thick, gelatinous water. "You thought you were invincible, that nothing could touch you." Her gaze sharpened. "But tonight, you're nothing. Just a scared little boy who finally ran out of protection." Kyle's jaw tightened. His face burned. The others, Chase, Logan, Tyler, weren't laughing anymore. Tyler, the one who had been the quietest, sniffled. His voice shook. Monica, please. I'm sorry. I swear I never wanted—" "Oh, but you laughed, didn't you?" Monica cut in, turning her icy gaze to him. Tyler swallowed hard. His face crumpled. Kyle's panic turned to rage. "You're no better than us," he spat. "You think this makes you righteous? This makes you a psycho." Monica smirked. "Oh, that's funny." She pulled out her phone and started a live stream. Kyle's blood ran cold. Wait, what are you— She pointed the camera right at them. Their panicked red faces, their bodies, tangled in the sticky thick water. The title of the stream? Entitled Teens Get a Taste of Their Own Medicine. Chase's face drained of color. Monica, no, please, just let us go and we'll leave you alone, I swear. I gave you that option months ago. Kyle's rage exploded. Turn that off. My dad will… Monica's eyes flashed. Your dad? She whispered. Oh, don't worry, Kyle. She held up the phone. He's watching. And then, just as Kyle opened his mouth to scream, her phone rang. Charles Whitmore. Right. On. Time. Monica stared at the glowing screen of her phone. Charles Whitmore's name flashing. Kyle saw it too. For the first time all night his face wasn't filled with anger, but fear. Answer it. Kyle's voice was strained, desperate. You have to answer. My dad. He'll fix this. He'll pay you. He'll… Monica took a slow breath, then pressed accept. Silence. Then, Monica. The voice was smooth, calculated. The voice of a man who had never been told no. She let the silence stretch, let him sit in it. For once, he was the one waiting. What now, Charles? She said, voice calm. A sharp breath. You've made your point, he said coolly. Now let them out. Monica's fingers tightened around the phone. She turned the camera toward the trapped boys. Kyle, glaring but terrified. Chase, sobbing. Logan and Tyler, silent, shaking. No. The word rang out like a gunshot. Charles's voice hardened. Monica, I don't think you understand. Oh, I understand perfectly. She walked slowly along the edge of the pool, her voice calm but cutting. I understand that when your son vandalized my property, you did nothing. When he keyed slurs into my car, you laughed. When he trashed my pool, the cops ignored me. When he made it his personal mission to terrorize me, you made one phone call and erased every complaint. She stopped, her voice cold as steel. But you can't erase this, can you? Charles's tone shifted. Less arrogant now, more calculating. Monica, he said, quieter now, pleading. You're angry. I get it. But you don't want to do this. You don't want to ruin your life over a mistake. Monica let out a laugh. Low. Bitter. A mistake? She turned her camera back to Kyle. Kyle's breathing was heavy, his face red with panic. Say it, she said. Kyle clenched his jaw. Screw you. Monica's lips curled. See, Charles? This isn't a mistake. This is who your son is. Charles exhaled sharply. What do you want? Monica finally looked back at her phone, tilting her head. Oh, Charles, it's not about what I want. It's about what you're going to do. Kyle froze. Dad, don't… But Charles was already speaking, his voice sharp. Name your price. Monica's smile was slow. Victory tasted sweet. Everything. The line went silent. Monica could hear Charles Whitmore's breathing on the other end, the sound of a man who had never been backed into a corner before. Kyle thrashed harder, his anger turning to pure desperation. Dad! Don't listen to her. She's crazy. She's… Shut up, Kyle. Kyle froze. The other boys did too. Charles's voice was different now. Tense, controlled, dangerous. But it wasn't directed at Monica. It was directed at his son. Monica tilted her head. Interesting. Smart man, she murmured. So, Charles, here's how this is going to go. She slowly crouched at the edge of the pool, phone still recording, her other hand trailing over the thick, glue-like surface. You're going to make a public statement. Right now. Live. Charles's voice tightened. And say what? Monica smiled. The truth. Kyle's eyes went wide. Dad, don't. But Charles had already realized the game was over. His son was drowning. Not in water, but in his own mistakes. And for the first time in his life, Charles couldn't buy his way out. Fine, Charles said, his voice clipped. I'll do it. I'll… No, no, no. Monica cut him off smoothly. You'll do it right now. She opened her live stream again. Thousands of viewers were already tuned in, watching, waiting. Kyle's name was trending. Kyle Whitmore exposed. She sent Charles the link. Go live, she ordered. Silence. Then, a notification. The moment Charles went live, Monica pressed play. And there he was, the untouchable real estate mogul, the man who had run this town for years, now looking tired, defeated, trapped. His lips pressed together before he finally spoke. He exhaled sharply. My son, Kyle, and his friends have engaged in unacceptable, racist, and criminal behavior against Monica Grant. I take full responsibility. I have failed as a parent, and my influence allowed this to happen without consequences. That ends tonight. The chat exploded. He admitted it. Oh, this dude's done. Monica is queen. Kyle was shaking. Dad, no, you can't. But Charles wasn't finished. As of tonight, I am stepping down from my position on the HOA board. I will be making a donation of $500,000 to the local Black Business Fund, and I will personally ensure Monica Grant's damages are paid in full. Kyle's screams were drowned out by the notifications. News stations were already picking up the story. Is that enough? Charles asked, his voice tight. Monica let the silence stretch before she finally said, for now. And with that, she ended the call. Click. Then, she turned her eyes back to Kyle. You're lucky, she said softly. I could have let you drown. And then, she reached into her pocket and pulled out a small vial. With one graceful movement, she poured it into the water. The glue began to dissolve. The boys gasped, limbs finally breaking free. They crawled out, drenched, humiliated, and forever changed. And Monica, she simply walked back inside, leaving them there. They weren't her problem anymore. Next morning, the world had changed. Kyle Whitmore's face was plastered across every news channel, every social media feed. The headlines were brutal. Teen caught in racist attack gets a taste of his own medicine. Wealthy HOA president resigns after son's hate crime exposed. Monica Grant's revenge. The woman who fought back. The internet was relentless. Kyle and his friends, expelled. Arrested for trespassing, vandalism, and hate crimes. Charles Whitmore, his real estate empire crumbled overnight. Investors pulled out. HOA members turned on him. The once untouchable king of the neighborhood was left with nothing. And Monica was finally free. Monica stood by her pool, watching as the sunlight danced across the crystal-clear water. No more trash. No more slurs. Just peace. The weight that had pressed on her chest for months was finally gone. She had won. A voice interrupted her thoughts. Morning. Monica turned to see Lisa Henderson, a neighbor she had seen before but never spoken to. Lisa held a cup of coffee, her eyes filled with something between admiration and guilt. You were brave, Lisa said softly, standing up to them like that. Monica studied her for a long moment before answering. I was tired. Lisa nodded, understanding. Then, hesitantly, she said, some of us, she swallowed. Some of us should have spoken up sooner. Monica's lips curled slightly. Yes, you should have. Lisa looked away, shame flickering across her face. Monica let the silence sit before finally adding, but you still can. Lisa lifted her gaze, something shifting in her expression. A quiet promise. And with that, Monica turned back to her pool. The water was calm, clear. For the first time in a long time, so was she.